The deep, echoing blast of a Viking horn shatters the silence, a sound that once sent chills down the spines of warriors and villagers alike. Now, it's your invitation to step into a world where gods walk among mortals, where giants tower over mountains, and where creatures of shadow lurk just beyond the firelight. This is the realm of Norse mythology, a tapestry woven with legends so vivid, so raw. They feel less like stories and more like memories waiting to be rediscovered. Imagine standing on the shores of Midgard, the realm of humans, as the great serpent Jormungandr stirs beneath the waves, its coils encircling the world. Or gazing into the sky as the wolves skirl and Hati chase the sun and moon, their howls foretelling the end of all things. These aren't just tales, they're fragments of a belief system that shaped cultures, fueled conquests, and still whispers to us across centuries. But the gods are only part of the story. Beneath the towering branches of Yggdrasil, the world tree, an entire cosmos teems with beings both glorious and terrifying. From the mischievous Loki, whose tricks ripple through the halls of Asgard, to the Valkyries, fierce maidens who decide who lives and dies on the battlefield. Every creature has a role in the grand design. And then there are the ones you've never heard of, the Draugr, undead warriors who guard their tombs with unnatural strength, or the Huldra, forest spirits whose beauty hides a deadly secret. These beings aren't just monsters or helpers, they're reflections of the world's chaos and order, of human fears and dreams given form. So why does any of this matter today? Because these myths aren't frozen in the past. They pulse through our stories, our games, even our language. When you hear the word berserk, you're touching the legacy of warriors who fought in a trance-like fury, blessed or cursed by the gods themselves. When you see a dragon in a movie, you're glimpsing the shadow of Nithhöggr, the serpent that gnaws at the roots of the world tree. This video isn't just a list of creatures, it's a journey into the heartbeat of Norse belief, where every monster, every spirit, every god has a lesson to teach. Ready to meet them? Then let's begin, because the horn has sounded and the shadows are stirring. Picture the great Yggdrasil, not just a tree but the very axis of existence, its roots delving into forgotten depths, its branches scraping the heavens, holding the cosmos together like veins threading through a living body. This isn't just some symbolic plant, it's the scaffolding of reality itself, where every creak of its bark echoes through the 9 realms. 3 colossal roots anchor it, one in Asgard, realm of the gods, where the well of Erd bubbles with fate's whispers. Another stretches into Jotunheim, land of the giants, where the spring of Mimir hides wisdom steeped in sacrifice. The third pierces Niflheim, the frozen underworld, where the serpent Nithhöggr coils, endlessly chewing at the roots with venom-dripping fangs, as if trying to unravel the world itself. High above, an unnamed eagle perches in the highest branches, its wings stirring storms across Midgard, while the squirrel Ratatoskr darts up and down the trunk, carrying insults between the eagle and Nithhöggr, a cosmic game of telephone that fuels their eternal feud. And woven through it all are the Norns, shadowy weavers who carve destiny into the tree's trunk, their fingers tracing futures even the gods can't escape. This isn't just a myth, it's a blueprint. Every creature, every realm, exists because Yggdrasil binds them, the ultimate crossroads where gods, monsters, and mortals collide. Think of it like this: if Norse mythology were a vast, sprawling city, Yggdrasil would be its subway system, its power grid, its heartbeat all at once. Without it, the realms would drift apart like unmoored islands. The fire giants of Muspelheim couldn't march toward Ragnarok. Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin, would have no branches to return to with their whispered secrets. Even the rainbow bridge Bifrost, vibrant as it is, would fade without the tree's roots to ground it. Yggdrasil isn't just part of the story, it is the story, the stage where every drama, from Loki's schemes to Thor's battles, unfolds. And the most haunting part, it's alive. It bleeds sap when wounded, trembles at Ragnarok's approach, and in its groaning timbers, you can almost hear the universe breathing. The halls of Asgard gleam with gold and echo with the laughter of gods, not just any gods, but the Aesir, the ruling pantheon of Norse mythology. These aren't distant, untouchable deities, they're warriors, schemers, and protectors, each with passions and flaws as vast as the realms they govern. At the pinnacle stands Odin, the All-Father, a figure of terrifying contradictions. With one eye sacrificed to drink from the well of wisdom, he's the god of knowledge, poetry, and war. Yet he's also a wanderer in a tattered cloak, trading riddles with giants and digging up graves for secrets. His ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory soar across the worlds each dawn, returning to whisper truths into his ear. And then there's his spear, Gungnir, which never misses its mark, a symbol of his unbreakable will. But Odin's hunger for wisdom comes at a price. He's the architect of Ragnarok, the doom he tries desperately to delay, yet cannot escape. Then there's Thor, the thunder god, whose name alone made giants tremble. With his hammer Mjolnir, forged by dwarven hands, he's the protector of Midgard, smashing skulls and shattering mountains in battles that shake the cosmos. Think of him as the divine bouncer of the Norse world, brash, loud, and always ready to throw down. But there's more to him than muscle. His chariot, pulled by goats Tengrisnir and Tangjoster, rumbles across the sky, sparking storms. Even his belt, Mejingjörð, doubles his strength, a detail that hints at the Norse love for practicality in their gods. Yet for all his power, Thor isn't invincible. His encounters with the world serpent Jormungandr, his nemesis, always end in stalemate, a reminder that even gods have limits. And let's not forget Frigg, Odin's queen and the goddess of foresight. While Odin seeks knowledge, Frigg already knows, yet she keeps her silence, weaving fate-like tapestry in her hall. She's the protector of homes and families, a figure of quiet power often overshadowed by her husband's theatrics. But don't mistake her gentleness for weakness. When her son Baldur dreamed of his death, Frigg extracted oaths from every plant and stone to spare him except mistletoe, the oversight that Loki would later exploit. Her grief when Baldur dies is so profound, it cracks the heart of the world, proving that even gods are bound by love and loss. The Aesir aren't just powerful, they're deeply human. Tyr, the one-handed god of justice, sacrificed his hand to bind the monstrous wolf Fenrir. Heimdall, the ever-vigilant guardian of Bifrost, can hear grass grow and see for hundreds of miles. Even Loki, the trickster who straddles the line between ally and enemy, is bound to them by blood and chaos. Together, they're a family of flawed, fierce beings who don't just rule the 9 realms. They live in them, fighting, loving, and scheming with a vitality that makes their myths feel less like religion and more like the greatest saga ever told. While the Aesir rule Asgard with spear and thunder, another pantheon pulses through the Norse cosmos, older, wilder, and steeped in the raw magic of the earth itself. Meet the Vanir, gods of fertility, sea, and sorcery, whose power doesn't come from conquest but from the deep, humming energy of life. Where the Aesir are warriors, the Vanir are weavers of harvests, of tides, of spells that twist fate itself. Their story begins with war, the Aesir-Vanir War, a clash so cataclysmic it shattered the boundaries between realms, wasn't just a battle of strength, but a collision of worldviews. The Aesir, with their rigid hierarchies and love of order, saw the Vanir's shape shifting magic as chaos. The Vanir, in turn, saw the Aesir as uptight brutes, blind to the rhythms of wind and soil. Their conflict ended not with total victory, but with an uneasy truce, sealed by an exchange of hostages. And that's how the Vanir's brightest found themselves in Asgard: Freyr, Freyja, and Njord, three deities who'd forever change the balance of power. Freyr, the golden-haired god of sunshine and plenty, carries the weight of entire harvests in his smile. Gifted with Alfheim, the realm of the light elves, he rides a chariot pulled by a boar named Gullinbursti, whose golden bristles glow like dawn. But don't let his gentle domain fool you. Freyr wields a sword that fights on its own, a weapon he foolishly gave away for love. His story is one of sacrifice and sensuality, a reminder that even gods aren't immune to desire's folly. Then there's his sister, Freyja, the most enigmatic of the Vanir, goddess of love, sure, but also war, death, and satyr, a form of magic so potent even Odin coveted it. She rides a chariot drawn by cats, wears a cloak of falcon feathers, and weeps tears of red gold for her missing husband, Other. Half the slain warriors go to her hall, Sesrumnir, while the rest march to Valhalla, proof that the Vanir's influence snakes even into Odin's domain. And presiding over them all is Njord, the god of ships and shores, whose very presence calms storms. Father to Freyr and Freyja, he's a figure of abundance, his halls overflowing with fish and treasure. Yet his marriage to the giantess Skadi, a pairing meant to cement peace, becomes a lesson in incompatibility. She craves the mountains, he pines for the sea. Their compromise 9 nights in her icy peaks, 9 nights by his waves, only highlights the Vanir's deep ties to nature's untamable forces. What makes the Vanir endure isn't just their power, but their humanity. They're gods who understand hunger, longing, and the ache of unfulfilled promises. When Freyr falls for the giantess Njörður, he sends his servant Skirnir to woo her, offering apples of immortality and threats in equal measure, a messy, passionate courtship far from Odin's calculated bargains. When Freyja wanders the world in search of Other, her grief becomes a hymn to the universal sting of loss. Even their magic feels visceral. Satyr isn't about grand prophecies, but the intimate manipulation of threads, of destiny, of desire, of the very fabric of being. The Vanir's legacy lingers in the quiet moments, the first bite of a ripe apple, a sudden gust filling a sail, the whisper of leaves in a sacred grove. They remind us that divinity isn't just about might, but the delicate, furious art of creation itself. Odin, the All-Father, is a god of paradoxes, a ruler who wanders, a warrior who prizes wisdom, and a father who orchestrates destinies he cannot fully control. His name alone evokes reverence and fear, for he is not just king of the Aesir, but the architect of their struggles and the weaver of their fates. Picture him, a towering figure clad in a tattered cloak, his face half hidden by a wide-brimmed hat, a single piercing eye gleaming with the weight of centuries. That missing eye, a price paid in blood and agony at Mimir's well, the sacred spring where knowledge bubbles up from the roots of Yggdrasil. Odin didn't just give an eye, he tore it from his own skull and dropped it into the depths, all for a single draught of water that revealed the secrets of the cosmos. And what did he learn? Enough to know that even gods cannot escape their doom. His thirst for wisdom is insatiable. Every dawn, his ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, take flight across the 9 realms, returning to whisper truths into his ears. They're more than messengers, they're extensions of his mind, scouting the world so Odin can piece together the grand puzzle of existence. Yet knowledge, for him, is a double-edged sword. He hungers for it like a starving man, Yet every revelation weighs heavier on his shoulders. He knows Ragnarok is coming. He knows his own son, Baldur, will die. He even knows how the world will end, in fire and ice, with gods and monsters locked in final battle. And still, he schemes, bargains, and sacrifices, desperate to delay the inevitable. Then there's Sleipnir, his eight-legged stallion, a creature born from Loki's trickery and a giant stallion. Faster than the wind, able to gallop between realms, Sleipnir isn't just a mount but a symbol. Odin's reach extends everywhere, even into the spaces between worlds. But don't mistake Odin for a benevolent king on a throne. He's a god of war, his spear Gungnir never missing its mark, his presence on the battlefield as much a curse as a blessing. Warriors don't pray to him for victory, they pray for his favor, because Odin doesn't choose sides, he chooses souls. The berserkers, those who fight in a frenzy, their minds lost to battle rage. They're his, the slain heroes hauled to Valhalla by Valkyries. They're his too, an army gathered not for glory, but for the final, hopeless fight at Ragnarok. And then there's the poetry. Strange, isn't it? A god of slaughter and spells who also whispers inspiration into the hearts of skalds. Odin stole the mead of poetry, a magical brew that grants the gift of words, by seducing a giantess, drilling into a mountain, and fleeing as an eagle with his prize dripping from his beak. It's a messy, brutal story, but that's Odin willing to debase himself, to cheat, to suffer, all for power, because in the end, that's what defines him, not just wisdom, but the cost of it. He hangs himself from Yggdrasil for 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, to learn the secrets of the runes. He carves them into his own flesh, turning his body into a living tapestry of magic. This is the All-Father, not a distant, all-powerful deity, but a grim, relentless seeker who bleeds for his knowledge and shares it sparingly. He's the god who trades an eye for foresight, yet stumbles blindly into his own fate. The one who gathers heroes for a battle they cannot win. The paradox of Odin is that he knows everything and nothing all at once. The weight of wisdom is the unbearable truth that even gods are bound by the threads they try to weave. The sky cracks open with a roar that isn't thunder, it's laughter. Thor, the thunder god, strides into battle with Mjolnir in his fist, his red beard bristling, his eyes alight with the kind of fury that topples mountains. This isn't just a god, he's a force of nature, a storm given flesh, and his legend echoes so loudly in Viking halls that even Odin's ravens pause to listen. Thor doesn't rule from a golden throne, he stands on the front lines, between humanity and the abyss, his hammer the only thing keeping the giants at bay. Mjolnir isn't just a weapon, it's an extension of Thor's will, forged in the heart of a dying star by the dwarf brothers Brokkr and Sindri. The hammer is small enough to hide in his belt, yet heavy enough to level mountains. When he hurls it, the air itself shatters, and it always returns to his hand, loyal as a hound. But Mjolnir's power isn't just in destruction, it's a sacred object, used to bless marriages, consecrate land, and even resurrect his goats, Tengrisnir and Tangjoster, after he eats them for supper. That's the duality of Thor. He's as much a guardian of order as he is a whirlwind of violence. And oh, the violence! Thor's temper is legendary, a wildfire that ignites at the slightest insult. When the giant Hrungnir calls Asgard's walls a child's toy, Thor doesn't just challenge him, he smashes the giant's skull so hard that fragments of stone lodge in his own head, a permanent reminder of his rage. His battles aren't duels, they're seismic events. Take the time he decided to go fishing with the giant Hymir. What other god would use an ox's head as bait, row into the ocean's abyss, and hook Jormungandr, the world's serpent, yanking the beast so high that its venom rains down like acid. It's a moment of pure, reckless audacity, Thor grinning through the spray, the serpent's eyes reflecting the apocalypse to come. Yet for all his brute strength, Thor's failures are just as revealing. He can't lift Jormungandr from the sea, the serpent's too vast, its coils too tightly wound around Midgard. He can't outdrink the ocean, no matter how deep his thirst. And in the end, at Ragnarok, he'll slay the serpent only to drown in its venom, a fate he meets without flinching. That's why the Vikings loved him, not because he was invincible, but because he was theirs, a god who bled, who raged, who stood between them and the darkness, even when the darkness won. His popularity wasn't just spiritual, it was personal. Farmers wore near amulets to bless their fields. Warriors invoked his name before charging into battle, hoping for a fraction of his strength. Even his enemies respected him, giants whispered his name like a curse, and Loki, the trickster, knew better than to push him too far. Thor wasn't just worshipped, he was needed, a symbol of resilience in a world where frost and fire were always one misstep away from swallowing everything. So next time you hear thunder, don't just think of the noise. Think of Thor's chariot rumbling across the sky, his goat's hooves striking lightning. Think of a god who fought not for glory, but because it was his job to hold the line, to swing the hammer, to keep the giants at bay for one more day. In a pantheon of schemers and seers, Thor was the blunt instrument, the divine spark that reminded mortals and gods alike. Sometimes, the only answer is to hit something until it stops moving. Loki is the wildfire in the heart of Asgard, unpredictable, mesmerizing, and utterly uncontrollable. While Odin plots and Thor smashes, Loki twists, bending the rules until they snap. He's not just a trickster, he's the god of consequence, the living proof that even the divine can't escape chaos. Picture him, flame-haired and grinning, his eyes glinting with mischief as he engineers a prank that topples kingdoms or births monsters. He's the architect of Baldur's death, the weaver of schemes that unravel the gods' carefully laid plans, yet also the savior who retrieves Thor's stolen hammer or outwits giants with silver-tongued lies. Loki doesn't fit neatly into hero or villain, he's the spark in the tinderbox, the one who reminds the Aesir that even gods aren't infallible. Take his shape-shifting. Loki doesn't just change form, he becomes his disguises, slipping into skins as easily as breathing. One moment he's a fly, buzzing into a dwarf's workshop to sabotage a rival's masterpiece. The next, he's a mare, luring a stallion away to birth Sleipnir, Odin's eight-legged steed, a punchline with legs, literally. His fluidity is terrifying, not just because he can transform, but because he embodies the Norse fear of the uncanny, the thing that wears a familiar face but hides a knife behind its back. Even his loyalties shift like smoke. He'll feast with the gods one night and whisper secrets to their enemies the next, not out of malice, but because chaos is his oxygen. Then there's his children, the monsters even Odin dreads. With the giantess Angerboda, Loki fathers the stuff of nightmares. Fenrir, the wolf so vast his jaws stretch from earth to sky. Jormungandr, the serpent who circles the world, tail in its own mouth. And Hel, ruler of the dead who don't die gloriously. These aren't just offspring, they're living prophecies destined to break their chains at Ragnarok and devour the gods themselves. And yet, Loki didn't create them alone. The Aesir's fear made them monsters. They chained Fenrir with magic ropes, hurled Jormungandr into the sea, and banished Hel to the underworld, sealing their own doom by refusing to confront the chaos they'd helped birth. Which brings us to Ragnarok. Loki doesn't just participate in the apocalypse, he fuels it. When the gods bind him in a cave with a serpent's venom dripping onto his face, his agony shakes the earth, his screams the drumbeat of the coming end. Freed at last, he leads the army of the dead against Asgard, his vengeance as inevitable as the tide. But here's the twist: without Loki, there'd be no Ragnarok and no rebirth. The old world burns so the new one can rise, making him less a destroyer and more a catalyst, the painful pivot between death and renewal. So is Loki evil? That's too simple. He's the shadow in the gods' brilliance, the reminder that order can't exist without disorder. The Norse didn't fear him because he was wicked, they feared him because he was necessary. In a universe bound by fate, Loki is the wild card, the question mark etched into Yggdrasil's bark. Without him, the myths lose their teeth, their stakes, their terrifying, glorious humanity. Frigg and Freyja stand as twin pillars of Norse womanhood, one cloaked in quiet foresight, the other radiating the fierce glow of passion and magic. At first glance, they might seem like two sides of the same coin, but dig deeper, and you'll find entire realms between them. Frigg, Odin's queen, is the steady heartbeat of Asgard. She sits at her loom, fingers weaving not just thread, but the very fabric of fate itself, her gaze fixed on a future she cannot, or will not change. When her son Baldur dreams of his death, she extracts oaths from every creature, every stone, every spark of flame to spare him, all but the unassuming mistletoe. It's a mother's love turned into divine strategy, yet her knowledge becomes her torment. She knows Baldur will die, just as she knows Ragnarok's flames will consume the gods. But unlike Odin, who rages against destiny, Frigg bears her foresight with a quiet sorrow, a reminder that wisdom and power don't always bring peace. Then there's Freyja, the Vanir goddess who crashes into Asgard like a storm, her presence impossible to ignore. If Frigg is the hearth fire, Freyja is the wildfire, untamed, unpredictable, and dazzling. She doesn't just preside over love, she commands it, her lust for life so potent she's known to take mortal lovers without apology. Her tears, shed for her missing husband Other, fall as gold, a poetic nod to how even her grief transforms into something coveted. But reduce her to a love goddess, and you'll miss her fangs. Freyja rides into battle alongside Odin, her chariot pulled by cats, her cloak of falcon feathers letting her soar between worlds. Half the slain warriors belong to her, claimed for her hall Sessrumnir, no pale imitation of Valhalla, but a glittering palace where the dead feast just as fiercely. And then there's her Seidr, a form of magic so potent it blurs the line between prophecy and manipulation. Odin, the so-called All-Father, had to beg her to teach him its secrets, a humbling moment for a god who hates to kneel. Their differences crystallize in the artifacts they wield. Frigg's tools are domestic yet profound. The spindle, the distaff, symbols of her quiet control over destiny's weave. Freyja's signature piece, the Brisingamen, a necklace of such beauty she slept with 4 dwarves to win it, a scandalous bargain that shocks the Aesir but fits her perfectly. She's unashamed of her desires, whether for jewels, lovers, or power. Frigg would never dare such a trade. Her strength lies in restraint, in the unspoken sway she holds over even Odin. Yet for all their contrasts, they share a grim commonality. Both are goddesses of loss. Frigg's grief for Baldur is the linchpin of Ragnarok, her mourning so vast it cracks the world's foundations. Freyja's search for Other drives her to wander Midgard in disguise, her longing a mirror to every human heartache. They remind us that divinity doesn't spare you from pain, it just makes the stakes higher. So who shapes mortal lives more, Frigg, the weaver of fates, or Freyja, the tempest who shows them how to live, the answer lies in the stories. When a Viking woman prays for her child's safety, she whispers Frigg's name. When a warrior seeks courage or a lover seeks passion, they call on Freyja. One governs the threads, the other teaches mortals to pull them. Together, they're the reason Norse mythology doesn't just sing of battles and doom, but of the tender, terrible beauty of being alive. Tyr's name isn't shouted in mead halls like Thor's, or whispered in fear like Odin's, but when the gods needed someone to pay the ultimate price for justice, he was the only one who stepped forward. Picture this: Fenrir, the monstrous wolf, grows larger every day, his jaws stretching wider than the horizon, his strength rivaling the roots of Yggdrasil itself. The gods know he's destined to break free at Ragnarok, so they hatch a plan to bind him with an enchanted ribbon, Gleipnir, crafted from impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the breath of a fish. But Fenrir isn't fooled. He'll only let them tie him if one of them places their hand in his mouth as collateral. The gods hesitate, all except Tyr. With a stillness that cuts through the tension, Tyr extends his right hand, his sword hand, the symbol of his power, and places it between Fenrir's fangs. The moment the ribbon tightens, Fenrir realizes he's been tricked. His snarl shakes the earth, and with a single snap, he severs Tyr's hand at the wrist. The god doesn't cry out, doesn't flinch. He pays the price without complaint, his sacrifice ensuring the wolf's imprisonment for now. This isn't just a story of bravery, it's a lesson in the brutal arithmetic of justice. Tyr doesn't act for glory or vengeance. He acts because someone must, and he's the only one willing to bear the cost. While Thor smashes problems with Mjolnir and Odin weaves schemes, Tyr stands apart, a god of quiet resolve. His halls aren't filled with feasting heroes, but with solemn oaths and laws etched in stone. He's the divine arbiter, the one who presides over Thing meetings, the Viking assemblies where disputes are settled. When warriors clasp hands to seal a bargain, they're invoking Tyr. When a chief rules fairly, even at personal loss, he's channeling Tyr's spirit. The Norse didn't just admire strength, they revered the strength to restrain, to uphold order when chaos beckoned. Yet Tyr's stoicism hides a deeper irony. The god of justice is also the god of war, but not the frenzy of berserkers or the chaos of battlefields. His is the measured war of survival, the kind fought to protect rather than conquer. His missing hand becomes a symbol not of weakness, but of the price of trust. While Odin hoards knowledge and Loki thrives on deceit, Tyr's word is unbreakable, even when it costs him flesh and blood. And let's talk about that hand. In Viking culture, a right hand was everything: the sword grip, the oath pledge, the very embodiment of a warrior's honor. Losing it wasn't just a wound, it was a stripping of identity. Yet Tyr adapts. He fights left-handed. He rules without hesitation. His maiming isn't a tragedy, it's a transformation, proof that true power lies in what you're willing to surrender. Tyr's fate at Ragnarok is often overlooked, but it's telling. While Thor falls to Jormungandr and Odin to Fenrir, Tyr faces Garmr, the hellhound of hell, another beast bound by divine decree. The circle closes. The god who sacrificed to restrain one monster dies battling another, his justice unwavering to the end. So why don't we hear more of him? Perhaps because Tyr's virtue is too quiet for sagas. He doesn't seek applause. He doesn't twist fate like Odin or unravel it like Loki. He simply does what's right, even when it breaks him. In a pantheon of larger-than-life egos, Tyr is the reminder that the greatest strength isn't in the swing of a hammer, it's in the hand you offer, knowing full well it might be bitten off. At the threshold of Asgard, where the shimmering Bifrost bridge arcs across the sky like a frozen lightning strike, stands a figure forged from vigilance, itself Heimdall. Clad in armor that gleams like dawn on snow, his eyes pierce through fog, darkness, and even time. He isn't just a guardian, he's a living alarm system for the gods. His senses so sharp he can hear grass growing in Midgard and spot a single flea crawling on a giant's cloak in Jotunheim. His home, Himinbjörg, isn't a hall for feasting but a watchtower perched where heaven meets earth, its doors always open, its occupant never resting. Then there's Gjallarhorn, the golden trumpet resting at his hip. This isn't some ceremonial trinket, it's the divine air raid siren. When Heimdall blows it, the sound will crack the sky, echoing through every realm to herald Ragnarok's arrival. Imagine a note so profound it shakes the roots of Yggdrasil, a blast that wakes gods, giants, and the dead alike. That's Heimdall's final duty, to sound the alarm when the end begins. But until that moment, he's the silent sentinel, tracking every footstep on the Rainbow Bridge, his sword Herf, they're always drawn, not out of paranoia, but necessity. Because Heimdall knows what others forget, the most dangerous threats don't storm the gates. They slink in, disguised as friends, which brings us to Loki. Their feud isn't just personal, it's cosmic. Heimdall sees through every illusion, every shapeshifted form the trickster wears. He's the one who catches Loki mid-scheme, whether stealing Freyja's necklace or slipping into Asgard in a false skin. Their enmity crescendos at Ragnarok, where they're destined to face each other in a duel to the death, a clash of perfect opposites. Loki, chaos incarnate, against Heimdall, order's unwavering blade. They'll slay each other simultaneously, a poetic end for two forces that could never coexist. Yet Heimdall's greatness isn't just in his foresight or his sword arm. It's in his patience. While Thor rages and Odin broods, Heimdall stands watch day after day, century after century, with no applause, no songs sung in his honor. He's the gods' silent vow to themselves that someone will always be looking, even when the rest of the world sleeps, and in that unbroken gaze, there's a strange comfort. Because as long as Heimdall guards the bridge, the monsters stay on their side, until one day they don't. The battlefield falls silent, not from peace, but from the weight of what comes next: the whisper of wings, the gleam of armor untouched by blood, and the unearthly presence of figures who hover between life and death like specters of war itself. These are the Valkyries, Odin's handpicked shield maidens, and they don't just witness the carnage, they curate it. With eyes sharper than any blade, they survey the slain, deciding in an instant who is worthy of Valhalla's golden halls and who will fade into the mists of Hell's domain. But don't mistake them for mere reapers. The Valkyries are warriors in their own right, their swords just as deadly as those of the Einherjar they escort. And when they ride, it's not on horses but through the sky itself. Their mounts, some say winged, others spectral, leaving trails of storm clouds in their wake. Consider Brynhildr, the most legendary of them all, a Valkyrie so fierce, so unwavering in her judgment, that when she defies Odin by sparing a warrior he marked for death, her punishment is as cruel as it is poetic. Stripped of her divinity, she's cast into a mortal prison, a ring of fire, trapped in an enchanted sleep, until a hero brave enough to walk through flames claims her. Enter Sigurd, the dragon slayer, whose love for her becomes as tragic as any mortal tale. Their story unravels with betrayals, magic potions, and a love so fierce it outlives death, proof that even Valkyries aren't immune to the messiness of the human heart. Brynhildr's defiance isn't just rebellion, it's a reminder that these, choosers of the slain, aren't mindless servants. They're beings of conviction, capable of mercy and wrath. Yet for every Brynhildr, there are countless unnamed Valkyries performing their grim duty with quiet precision. Picture a warrior's final moment, his body broken, his breath ragged, his vision blurring. Then, a hand reaches down not to steal his life, but to lift him from it. The Valkyrie's touch is neither gentle nor harsh, it's purposeful. She speaks no words, but her presence tells him everything. Valhalla awaits. There, he'll feast and fight until Ragnarok calls him back to battle. It's a strange comfort, this exchange. The Valkyrie doesn't mourn him. She doesn't praise him. She honors him, transforming his death into something more than an end, a beginning. But their role isn't just about selection. Valkyries are psychopomps, guides who navigate the soul's journey from the bloody soil of Midgard to the mead-soaked tables of Odin's hall. They're the bridge between the mortal and the divine, their very existence a promise that glory isn't reserved for gods alone. And when they pour the ale in Valhalla, it's not as servants but as equals, their war cries harmonizing with the Einherjars as they prepare for the final battle. Here's the duality that makes them unforgettable. They're both nurturers and warriors, executioners and saviors. They don't just carry the dead, they choose them, weighing a warrior's courage, his skill, the unyielding fire in his spirit. And in that choice, they shape the very army of Ragnarok, because when the end comes, it won't be the gods who fight first, it'll be the mortals they deemed worthy, led by the Valkyries who brought them home. Beyond the golden doors of Valhalla, an endless feast rages, not the quiet repose of heaven, but a warrior's paradise forged in steel and mead. This is the realm of the Einherjar, the chosen dead, where every day begins with a battle and ends with resurrection. Picture it, thousands of the mightiest warriors to ever draw breath, their wounds knitting back together as dawn breaks, their swords sharpened anew for another day of glorious combat. They fight not for conquest, but for the sheer joy of it, their clashes shaking the rafters of Odin's hall. And when limbs are severed and blood soaks the straw-strewn floor, it's no tragedy, it's routine. By sunset, the fallen rise again, whole and hungry, ready to feast on the boar Sihrimnir, a creature that magically regenerates each night to feed the endless horde. This is no peaceful afterlife, it's boot camp for the apocalypse. Valhalla's brilliance hides a grim purpose. These warriors aren't just here to revel, they're being tempered for Ragnarok, the final battle where they'll march alongside Odin against the giants and monsters. Their daily deaths aren't punishment, they're drills. Each strike of the sword, each fatal wound, is a lesson carved into muscle memory. Even their feasting is training. The mead flows from the udder of the goat Haithran, who nibbles the leaves of Yggdrasil itself, and the cups are never empty. Why? Because a true warrior fights best with a full belly and a roaring heart. The Einherjar are Odin's investment, his insurance policy against the inevitable. They'll die one last time at Ragnarok, yes, but they'll die as legends. Not all warriors go to Valhalla, though. Across the fields lies Folkvangr, Freyja's domain, where the other half of the slain find their rest. If Valhalla is a barracks, Folkvangr is a sunlit meadow no less glorious, but far gentler. Here, there's no daily slaughter, no endless cycle of combat. Instead, Freyja's hall Sessrumnir welcomes the dead with music and solace, a place where love and memory outweigh the need for eternal readiness. The difference between the two realms isn't about worthiness, it's about purpose. Odin gathers soldiers, Freyja shelters souls, yet even in Valhalla, there's a whisper of sorrow beneath the clamor. These warriors left behind families, homes, unfinished lives. Their eternity is a trade, mortal love for immortal glory. When Ragnarok comes, they'll charge into battle knowing this is the end, no resurrection, no second chances. Their valor will burn bright, but it will burn out. That's the paradox of the Einherjar. They're both the lucky ones and the doomed ones, celebrated and sacrificial. Their afterlife isn't an ending. It's a long, loud prelude to the last verse of the world. Fenrir isn't just a wolf. He's a force of nature, a storm of teeth and hunger that even the gods fear. Born to Loki and the giantess Angerboda, his growth defies comprehension. As a pup, he's playful, almost endearing, but every day his body stretches longer. His jaws grow wider, until his very shadow blots out the sun. The gods watch, and their unease turns to terror. They see the prophecies. This wolf will swallow Odin whole at Ragnarok, his fangs dripping with divine blood. But Fenrir isn't evil. He's inevitable, a living embodiment of the chaos that even the mightiest ruler can't control. So the gods do what gods do, they try to outsmart fate. First, they test Fenrir with chains, spinning tales of a game to measure his strength. The wolf humors them, snapping the first two bonds, Gleipnir and Lading, as if they're made of straw. But the third chain is different. Crafted by dwarves from impossible things, the sound of a cat's footfall, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, Gleipnir is thin as a ribbon yet stronger than any metal. Fenrir hesitates. He's no fool. He demands a condition. One of the gods must place their hand in his mouth as collateral. Tyr, the bravest of them all, steps forward. The moment Fenrir realizes he's been tricked, his jaws close, severing Tyr's hand in a single, bloody snap. The wolf howls, thrashing against Gleipnir, but the more he struggles, the tighter the bond becomes. Here's the cruel irony. The gods' fear creates the monster they sought to avoid. By binding Fenrir, they plant the seeds of his rage. They shove a sword into his mouth to keep his jaws pried open, his saliva forming a river of poison called Van, a constant dribble of fury. He lies there, trapped but not broken, waiting for the day the chains finally shatter, and they will, because prophecies aren't warnings, they're promises. At Ragnarok, Fenrir will break free, his vengeance as vast as the sky. He'll join Loki and Jormungandr in the final march against Asgard, and when he meets Odin on the battlefield, it won't be a battle, it'll be a reckoning. Fenrir's story isn't just about destruction. It's about the cost of trying to control what can't be controlled. The gods chain him because they're afraid of chaos, of the wildness that lurks beyond their golden halls. But chaos isn't evil, it's the flip side of order, the shadow that gives shape to the light. Fenrir doesn't choose his role any more than a hurricane chooses its path. He simply is, a reminder that some forces are too vast to be tamed, too primal to be bargained with, and when his jaws close around Odin, it won't be malice, it'll be fate, the universe balancing its scales at last. Beneath the churning waves of Midgard's oceans, far deeper than any ship's hull has ever plunged, something stirs, a coil as thick as a mountain range shifts in the darkness. This is Jormungandr, the world serpent, Loki's monstrous child, whose body has grown so vast it wraps around the entire realm of humans, its tail clamped between its teeth like an Ouroboros of pure dread. The gods didn't just fear this creature, they reshaped the world to contain it. When Odin first saw Jormungandr, still young but already dripping venom, he hurled it into the sea, hoping the abyss would keep it at bay. Instead, the serpent thrived, growing longer and heavier with every passing century, until its scales pressed against the ocean floor and its spine formed a living ring around Midgard. Sailors whisper of strange currents, of waters that boil without warning. Little do they know. Their ships glide just above the spine of a beast that could unmake the world with a single thrash. Thor's feud with Jormungandr isn't just a rivalry, it's a cosmic dance, a battle of equals that plays out in explosive, feudal skirmishes. Take the infamous fishing trip, a story so audacious it's etched into Viking lore. Thor, ever the provocateur, ventures to the edge of the world with the giant Hymir, insisting they row further into the open sea. When Hymir balks, Thor grabs the oars himself, muscles straining as he powers them into waters no mortal could survive. Then, with the grin of a madman, he baits his hook with the head of Hymir's own ox, Jormungandr's favorite snack, and drops the line into the blackness. The serpent bites, Thor heaves, his divine strength enough to hoist mountains, but this is different. The sea erupts as Jormungandr's gargantuan head breaches the surface, eyes like burning coals, fangs dripping venom that sizzles against the waves. For a heartbeat, the two lock gazes, the god who protects Midgard and the monster who is Midgard's shadow. Thor raises Mjolnir, ready to strike the killing blow until Hymir, trembling with terror, severs the line. The serpent sinks back into the depths, leaving Thor roaring with frustration. This isn't just a tale of near victory, it's a preview of Ragnarok. When the final battle comes, Thor and Jormungandr will meet one last time on the blood-soaked plains. The thunder god will finally land that fatal blow, crushing the serpent's skull with Mjolnir, but Jormungandr's dying act will be to drench him in so much venom that Thor staggers back, lifeless, before taking 9 steps and collapsing. Mutual annihilation. It's a cycle etched into fate itself, the protector and the destroyer, locked in a duel neither can truly win. There's a chilling poetry to Jormungandr's existence. It doesn't hunt, it doesn't scheme, it simply is a perpetual reminder that the god's control is an illusion. The serpent's coils bind Midgard not out of malice, but because that's its nature, to encircle, to endure, to wait. When it finally releases its tail at Ragnarok, the oceans will surge inland, the earth will crack, and the world will drown beneath its own primal fury. Until then, it lingers in the deep, a silent titan biding its time, as inevitable as the tide. Hel doesn't rule a kingdom, she is the kingdom. The moment you glimpse her, you understand, this is no mere underworld goddess. Her body tells the story itself, one side radiant, flushed with the warmth of life, the other shriveled and corpse pale, as if death itself couldn't decide whether to claim her fully. Daughter of Loki and Angerboda, sister to Fenrir and Jormungandr, Hel is the keeper of the forgotten dead, the ones who didn't earn Valhalla's mead halls or Folkvanger's meadows. Her realm, Helheim, isn't a place of fire and torment, but a mist-shrouded land of stillness, where souls wander like shadows in perpetual twilight, the gates of Helheim groan with the weight of inevitability. To enter, you must cross the river Yggdrasil on a bridge paved with gold, a cruel irony, gilding the path to oblivion, and be judged by the hound Garmr, whose howls echo through the caverns like a funeral dirge. Once inside, time blurs, the dead don't suffer, they simply exist, their memories fraying like old rope. But don't mistake Hel for a passive warden. When Baldur, the shining god, dies, pierced by that cursed mistletoe dart, it's Hel who holds the cards. The gods send Hermod, Odin's son, racing to Helheim on Sleipnir, begging for Baldur's release. Hel's response is a masterclass in cold diplomacy. If every living thing weeps for Baldur, he may return. But if one refuses, he stays. The gods nearly succeed until Loki, disguised as a giantess, refuses to shed a tear. Hel's verdict stands, her neutrality unshaken. She doesn't gloat, She doesn't mourn, she rules, proving that even in the face of divine desperation, death plays no favorites. Hell's power isn't in theatrics, but in absolute, unyielding order. While Odin frets over prophecies and Thor smashes through problems, she administers her realm with the precision of a surgeon's blade. Her hall, Yggdrasil, isn't a pit of screams but a place of eerie quiet, where her servants Ganglot and Ganglotti, so sluggish their names mean lazy and sloth, move like figures in a dream. Even her dish, hunger, and her knife, famine, aren't tools of torture but symbols of the slow erosion that comes for all things, yet there's a strange fairness to her reign. Hell doesn't punish the dead for their lives, she gives them what they've earned. The warrior who died old and bedridden rests beside the coward who fled battle, because in her eyes, death is the great equalizer. When Ragnarok comes, she won't lead an army or fight alongside her father. She'll simply open her gates, releasing hordes of the dead to join the fray, not for vengeance, but because it's time. That's the true horror of hell, not malice, but indifference. She's the void that waits at the end of every story, the silence after the last note of the song. And when the gods fall and the world burns, she'll still be there, watching from her throne, half alive, half dead, eternal as the grave itself, beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, where time itself pools like water in a shadowed well. Three figures bend over their work, silent, relentless, inevitable. These are the Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, the weavers whose fingers don't spin thread but carve runes of fate directly into the world tree's bark. They aren't just observers of destiny, they're its architects, etching the past, present, and future into the very bones of the cosmos. Urd, whose name means what once was, tends to the roots, her hands tracing the grooves of choices already made. Verdandi, what is becoming, shapes the trunk's living wood, her knife hovering where now bleeds into next. And Skuld, what shall be, works the highest branches, her cuts so precise they dictate the fall of kings and the birth of stars. Together, they don't just predict, they define. Unlike the Greek moirai, who spin, measure, and cut life's thread with detached finality, the Norns operate in shades of gray. The Norse didn't believe in an unbreakable, linear fate, but in a tapestry where threads could fray, knot, or even unravel. A warrior might be destined to die in battle, but how he fights, whether with cowardice or glory, is his to choose. The gods themselves aren't exempt. Odin's ceaseless quest for wisdom, a desperate attempt to rewrite the runes he knows are already carved. Frigg's silent grief for Baldur. The cost of seeing the future but being powerless to change its core. Even Yggdrasil bears the scars of this duality. Its bark splits and heals as the Norns' blades dig deep, the tree whispering secrets only they can decipher. Their influence isn't confined to gods and heroes. Every life, from the mightiest Jarl to the lowliest thrall, leaves a mark on the tree. Picture a newborn's first breath. Somewhere in the roots, Urd's blade flickers. A marriage vow, Verdandi's knife pauses, then deepens a groove. A death cry, Skuld's hand sweeps upward, sealing the story. This isn't myth as metaphor, it's myth as lived reality for the Vikings, who saw the Norns work in the unpredictability of storms, the sudden turn of luck in battle, the eerie certainty of a prophecy fulfilled. Yet here's the twist, the Norns aren't cruel. They don't revel in suffering or toy with mortals like puppets. They're custodians of a balance far older than Asgard itself. When they carve, it's with the solemnity of gardeners pruning a tree, knowing some branches must fall so others may thrive. Their runes don't erase free will, they frame it, offering boundaries within which chaos and choice dance. That's why the Norse could face their fates with such ferocity. Destiny might be written, but the pen was always held in trembling hands, so the next time you feel the weight of a decision, the pull of a path not taken, remember the Norns. Their blades are still moving, their runes still forming, and somewhere, in the spaces between what was and what will be, there's room to make your mark. Dragons in Norse mythology aren't just monsters, they're manifestations of primal fears, coiled around hordes of gold and whispers of doom. While Jormungandr dominates the cosmic scale, other serpents and worms slither through the sagas, each carrying its own weight of symbolism and bloodshed. Take Fafnir, the most infamous of them all. Once a dwarf, his transformation into a dragon is a cautionary tale of greed's corrosive power. When his father, the dwarf King Hreidmar, receives a ransom of cursed gold from Loki, blood money for the killing of his son Otjar, Fafnir's envy festers. He murders his own father, seizes the treasure, and flees into the wilderness, where his obsession twists his body as much as his soul. Over time, his limbs thicken into claws, his skin hardens into scales, and his breath burns with venom. He becomes less a creature and more a living vault, jealously guarding his hoard in a lair surrounded by the bones of those who dared to approach. Fafnir's downfall comes at the hands of the hero Sigurd, who digs a pit beneath the dragon's path and drives a sword upward into its heart as it crawls overhead. But even in death, Fafnir's curse lingers. His blood grants Sigurd the ability to understand birds, who warn him of betrayal. Yet the gold still brings ruin to all who claim it. This isn't just a story of heroism, it's a dissection of avarice. The dragon isn't merely an obstacle to overcome, it's the physical embodiment of the poison that turns brother against brother, son against father. Fafnir's fate whispers a harsh truth. Some treasures cost more than they are worth. Then there's Nidhöggr, the dragon who gnaws eternally at Yggdrasil's roots. Unlike Fafnir, Nidhöggr isn't motivated by greed. It's a force of pure entropy, its teeth grinding away at the foundation of the world itself. The Norse saw decay as inevitable, and Nidhöggr is that decay personified, a reminder that even the gods' creations are not permanent. Its name, roughly translated as Malice Striker, hints at its role as an agent of chaos, corroding the bonds that hold the cosmos together. When Ragnarok arrives, Nidhöggr will finally break free, its wings sodden with the blood of the dead as it soars over the battlefield, not to fight but to feast. Smaller dragons and serpents lurk in the margins of lesser-known tales. The saga of Ragnar Lothbrok features a monstrous serpent coiled around a princess's tower, its presence a trial for any suitor brave enough to face it. Ragnar, ever the cunning warrior, wears pants soaked in tar and sand to repel the creature's venom, a blend of brute force and ingenuity that defines so many Norse heroes. Even these lesser dragons are never mere beasts, they're tests of character, their defeat a rite of passage. What unites these creatures is their duality. They're destroyers and guardians, omens and obstacles. A dragon's hoard is never just wealth, it's power, knowledge, or a ticking curse waiting to be unleashed. Their scales reflect the Norse understanding of the world, beautiful, terrible, and always demanding a price. Whether it's Fafnir's gold or Nidhöggr's gnawing, dragons don't just occupy the physical world, they live in the psyche, symbols of the battles we fight against our own hungers and the entropy that waits for us all. So the next time you hear a tale of a dragon, listen closely. The rustle of its wings isn't just a threat, it's a mirror, showing us the parts of ourselves we'd rather keep buried. The giants of Norse mythology, the Jotnar, are far more than the lumbering brutes their name might suggest. They are the raw, primordial forces that existed before order, before gods, even before time itself. At the dawn of creation, There was only Ymir, the first giant, a being of pure chaos born from the swirling void of Ginnungagap. His body, vast as the cosmos, became the very fabric of the world, his flesh the earth, his blood the seas, his bones the mountains, and his skull the heavens. The gods didn't create the universe, they carved it from the corpse of a giant, making the Jotun are not just enemies but the foundation of everything. This duality defines them, they are destruction and creation, enemies and ancestors, the wild chaos that the gods struggle to contain. Take Skadi, the huntress of winter, whose name means shadow. She's no mindless monster but a goddess in her own right, a figure of icy grace who strides across mountain peaks on skis, her bow strung with the wind itself. When the gods kill her father, the giant Thjazi, she doesn't rage blindly. She marches into Asgard demanding restitution. The gods offer her a husband as compensation, but with a twist, she must choose based on feet alone. Expecting Baldur's beauty, she picks Njord, the sea god, a mismatch as stark as fire and frost. Their marriage crumbles under the weight of their differences. He craves the sound of waves, she longs for the silence of snow, yet Skadi's presence lingers in every blizzard, a reminder that even the gods must bargain with the wild. Then there's Thrym, the thief who dared to steal Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, and demanded Freyja as his bride in exchange. This isn't just a prank, it's a power play, a giant testing the limits of the gods' dominance. Thor's solution, disguising himself as Freyja in a bridal veil, leads to one of mythology's most absurd and revealing moments. When Freyja devours an entire ox and 3 barrels of mead at the wedding feast, Thrym's sister whispers that no bride has ever had such an appetite. Thor's cover is nearly blown, but Loki, ever the quick thinker, claims it's just her love for Thrym keeping her awake for 8 nights. The ruse works long enough for Thor to reclaim his hammer and reduce Thrym's hull to splinters, yet the tale exposes the fragile line between order and chaos. The giants aren't just obstacles, they're the gods' dark reflections, embodying everything Asgard tries to suppress. This tension isn't incidental, it's essential. The Jotnar represent the untamed world, the storms the gods can't calm, the winters they can't melt, the entropy they can't reverse. Even the mighty Aesir rely on them. Without the giantess Grid's loan of her unbreakable staff, Thor would have fallen to Geirrod. Without Angerboda, there'd be no Fenrir, no Jormungandr, no Hel, no catalysts for Ragnarok. The giants aren't just foes, they're the necessary counterbalance to divine order, the chaos that keeps the cosmos from stagnation. When Ragnarok comes, it won't be the gods who unleash it, it'll be the giants, rising from the edges of the world like a tidal wave of frost and flame. Surtur, the fire giant, will march from Muspelheim with a sword brighter than the sun, setting the heavens ablaze. The seas will boil as Jormungandr thrashes, and Fenrir's jaws will gape wide enough to swallow the sky. Yet this isn't just an ending, it's a recalibration. The giants don't destroy the world, they clear the way for a new one, proving that chaos isn't the enemy of creation, but its partner. The Jotnar were here first, and in the end, they'll have the last word. Trolls loom large in Norse legend, not just in size, but in their deep roots within the rugged landscapes of Scandinavia. These hulking, slow-witted creatures aren't mere monsters, they're embodiments of the untamed wilderness, lurking in mountain passes and beneath rocky overhangs, their very existence a testament to the land's harsh, unforgiving nature. Unlike dragons or serpents, trolls are deeply tied to the earth, their skin often described as moss-covered or craggy, blending into the cliffs they call home. But don't mistake their dim wits for harmlessness. Cross a troll, and you'll face brute strength capable of crushing boulders or bones with ease. What truly defines them, though, is their fatal flaw: sunlight. Stories tell of trolls caught outdoors at dawn, their bodies petrifying into stone the moment the first rays touch them. Wander through Norway's countryside even today, and locals will point to odd rock formations, whispering that these are trolls frozen mid-stride, forever paying the price for their clumsiness or pride. Ogres, on the other hand, are a different breed of terror. Where trolls might blunder into trouble, ogres seek it out, violent, cunning, and utterly ruthless. Often depicted as solitary and grotesque, these beings haunt the fringes of society, lurking in dark forests or abandoned ruins, waiting to ambush the unwary. Unlike trolls, ogres have no weakness to sunlight. Their menace isn't bound by time or terrain. In folklore, they're the stuff of cautionary tales, like the ogre who lured children into his lair with promises of treasure, only to devour them. Yet ogres aren't invincible. Their downfall often comes from their own arrogance, underestimating the wit of their human prey. One famous tale recounts a farmhand outsmarting an ogre by challenging him to squeeze water from a stone, a trick involving hidden cheese, or another where a quick-thinking girl escapes by convincing the ogre she's too lean to eat, buying time to flee. The distinction between trolls and ogres reveals a fascinating duality in Norse folklore. Trolls represent the land's dangers, unpredictable but bound by natural laws, like the turning of the sun. Ogres embody the darker side of human fears, the cruelty that hides in shadow, the predator who thinks as well as hunts. Both serve as reminders of the world's peril, but trolls carry a peculiar tragedy. Their stony fate immortalizes them as part of the landscape, a bridge between myth and the very real cliffs and peaks that shaped Viking lives. Next time you see a twisted tree or a jutting boulder, take a closer look. The line between story and stone might be thinner than you think. Deep beneath the mountains, where sunlight never reaches and the air hums with the steady clang of hammer on anvil, the dwarves of Norse mythology carve out their legacy, not through brute strength or divine power, but through craftsmanship so sublime it borders on magic. These aren't the comic relief of later fairy tales. They're the forgers of destiny, the hands behind the most legendary weapons and treasures in the Norse cosmos. Take Mjolnir, Thor's thunderous hammer, its handle slightly too short because of Loki's meddling, yet so perfectly balanced it never misses its target. Or Gungnir, Odin's spear, its tip inscribed with runes so potent it strikes with the inevitability of fate itself. And then there's Draupnir, the golden ring that drips 8 identical copies of itself every 9th night, a symbol of endless abundance. These aren't just tools, they're masterpieces, wrought in the fiery hearts of Svartalfheim, the dwarven realm of shadows and forged smoke. The brothers Brokkr and Eitri stand as titans among their kind. When Loki, ever the provocateur, bets his head that no dwarf could craft treasures to rival those of the gods, favored smiths, Brokkr and Eitri rise to the challenge. With Brokkr working the bellows, pumping flames so hot they warp time, and Eitri wielding his hammer with divine precision, they create not 1 but 3 legendary artifacts: Mjolnir, Draupnir, and Gullinbursti, Freyr's golden boar. Loki, desperate to sabotage them, transforms into a fly, biting Brokkr's eyelids until blood blinds him, yet the dwarf never falters, his hands steady even as his vision fails. The result, Mjolnir's handle is shortened, but its power is unmatched. The gods declare the brothers victorious, and Loki barely escapes with his head, literally. The dwarves sew his lips shut instead, a fitting punishment for the trickster who underestimated their grit. But dwarves aren't just skilled, they're shrewd, often as dangerous as the treasures they create. Their homes are labyrinthine caverns, where echoing footsteps might lead to vast workshops or bottomless pits. They hoard knowledge and metal alike, trading with gods and mortals, but always on their own terms. Take Andvari, the dwarf cursed by Loki to eternally guard his gold. When the mortal King Hreidmar demands the treasure as weregild for his son's death, Andvari lays one final spiteful curse on the hoard, a curse that will later ignite Fafnir's transformation into a dragon. Dwarves don't forget slights, and their vengeance is as meticulously crafted as their jewelry. Yet for all their cunning, dwarves are bound by their own codes. They respect skill above all, honoring those who prove themselves worthy. When the gods need a ship that can fold into a pocket Skidbladnir, or a chain stronger than the universe Gleipnir, it's the dwarves they turn to, not just for labor, but for genius. These creations aren't just functional, they're works of art, infused with the same primal energy that shaped the world from Ymir's bones. So next time you hear thunder, remember, it's not just Thor's hammer crashing down, it's the echo of a dwarven anvil ringing through the ages. Their legacy isn't written in sagas or sung in mead halls, but etched into the very bones of the cosmos, one flawless stroke at a time. The realms of Norse mythology don't just belong to gods and monsters, there are beings woven into the very fabric of nature itself, creatures of light and shadow who blur the line between the ethereal and the earthly. Among them, the elves stand apart, divided into two starkly contrasting tribes, the radiant Eljozolfar of Alfheim and the enigmatic Dyrkulfar, who dwell in the hidden crevices of the world. The Eljozolfar are beings of almost unbearable beauty, their skin luminescent as moonlit snow, their presence suffusing the air with a warmth that feels like the first breath of spring. Alfheim, their homeland, isn't just a realm, it's a living masterpiece, where golden light filters through eternally blossoming trees and rivers sing as they flow. Here, Freyr, the Vanir god of fertility and sunshine, holds sovereignty, his connection to the Eljozolfar as natural as sunlight to leaves. Under his rule, Alfheim thrives, a testament to the harmony between divinity and nature's purest magic. Yet not all elves bask in the glow. The Dyrkulfar, or dark elves, inhabit the spaces between roots and rocks, their forms shifting like smoke in torchlight. Where the Eljozolfar are tied to growth and renewal, the Dyrkulfar are creatures of mystery, their motives as inscrutable as the depths of a moonless forest. Some sagas paint them as malevolent, cursing careless travelers who disturb their domains. Others suggest they're merely indifferent, guardians of secrets too old for mortal comprehension. Unlike their luminous cousins, the Dyrkulfar rarely interact with gods or humans, but when they do, the encounters leave marks. A sudden illness, a twisted ankle on an untroubled path, or an inexplicable gift left on a doorstep, all could be their handiwork. What unites these two kinds of elves is their intimate bond with magic. The Eljozolfar wield Satyr, the same sorcery Freyja taught Odin, but their craft is subtler, woven into the songs that make crops grow or the whispers that guide lost wanderers home. The Dyrkulfar, meanwhile, are said to manipulate shadows, bending darkness into illusions or weaving nightmares from thin air. Neither group is purely benevolent or wicked. They exist in a moral twilight, their actions as unpredictable as the wind. Humans who stumble into their affairs rarely come away unchanged. Norse sagas tell of shepherds lured into Alfheim by melodies only to return decades later, aged in days, or miners who uncover Dyrkulfar tunnels and vanish without a trace. These stories aren't just warnings, they're acknowledgments of a world far stranger and more layered than the gods' grand dramas. the elves remind us that for all Thor's thunder and Odin's wisdom, there are forces older, quieter, and perhaps more enduring beings who were here long before the first god drew breath, and who will linger long after the last flame of Ragnarok flickers out. Before the first light of dawn touches the peaks of Asgard, two dark shapes slice through the mist, silent, swift, inseparable. Hugin and Munin, Odin's ravens, are more than mere birds. They are the Allfather's eyes and ears, his restless intellect given wings. Every morning, as the gods stir in their halls, Odin whispers to them, and they take flight, their black feathers blending into the shadows as they spiral down the great trunk of Yggdrasil into Midgard. They don't just observe, they collect, gathering whispers from battlefields, secrets from hearths, and murmurs from the lips of kings. By sunset, they return to perch on Odin's shoulders, their beaks brushing his ears as they deliver their reports. Thought and memory, Hugin and Munin aren't just names, they're functions, the twin engines of Odin's insatiable curiosity. But these birds are no simple spies. Their very existence reveals the heart of Odin's paradox, a god who rules from a throne, yet fears what he might miss. Imagine the weight of their daily journeys. Hugin, thought, dives into the chaos of mortal minds, sifting through plans and regrets, hopes and deceptions. Munin, memory, lingers longer, drawing out the threads of old grudges, half-forgotten oaths, the kind of scars that shape destinies. Together, they stitch a tapestry of understanding that Odin, for all his wisdom, cannot weave alone. Without them, he'd be blind to the shifting tides of Midgard, a terrifying thought for a god who's built his power on foresight. Their importance isn't just practical, it's symbolic. In Norse culture, ravens weren't just carrion eaters, they were oracles. Vikings watched their flight patterns before battles, seeking omens in their spirals. To see a raven was to stand at the threshold of the unseen. Odin's bond with Hugin and Munin elevates this idea to the divine. They're his tether to the mortal world, a reminder that even the king of the gods relies on something wilder, older, and less predictable than himself. Yet there's a haunting edge to their loyalty. In one poem, Odin confesses his fear. I worry that Hugin may not return, yet I tremble more for Munin. Thought might stray, but forgetfulness, the loss of memory, is the true abyss. Without Munin, even a god could lose himself, adrift in a present without past or purpose. It's a vulnerability rare among deities, a crack in Odin's otherwise impenetrable facade. So the next time you spot a raven perched on a bare branch, pause. Its sharp eyes might not be Odin's, but the echo is there, a flicker of thought, a shard of memory, the silent flight of knowledge that binds gods and mortals alike. Sleipnir isn't just a horse, it's a paradox, eight-legged, born of deception, and faster than the wind itself. This creature defies every expectation. Its story begins with a wall. Not just any wall, but the massive barrier around Asgard, built by a mysterious giant who promised to complete the work in exchange for the sun, the moon, and Freyja's hand in marriage. The gods agreed, confident the task was impossible until the giant stallion, Svadilfari, began hauling stones with uncanny speed. With the deadline looming, the gods turned to Loki, the one who'd brokered the deal, and demanded he fix it. Ever the shapeshifter, Loki transformed into a beautiful mare, luring Svadilfari away from his work. The ruse worked too well. Months later, Loki returned not with an apology, but with a foal. Sleipnir, the offspring of Loki and a giant's horse, was no ordinary creature. Its 8 legs moved with such precision it could gallop across water, through air, even between realms, leaving trails of rainbow light in its wake. Odin recognized Sleipnir's worth immediately. This wasn't just a mount, it was a key to the cosmos. While Thor's chariot rumbled across the sky, shaking the earth with its noise, Sleipnir moved silently, effortlessly bridging gaps between worlds. When Odin needed to descend into Helheim to question a dead Cirrus, Sleipnir carried him through the mist-shrouded gates. When Hermod raced to plead for Baldur's return, it was Sleipnir who outran death itself, its hooves never faltering on the icy road to Hel's throne. Even Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, seemed unnecessary for Odin. Why ride across a bridge when your horse can leap beyond its edges? Artifacts tell Sleipnir's tale as vividly as the sagas. Viking runestones depict its 8 legs in mid-stride, a blur of motion frozen in stone. On the Tjengvid image stone, Odin rides Sleipnir straight toward the afterlife, the beast's extra limbs symbolizing not just speed, but transcendence, the ability to move between life and death as easily as crossing a field. This wasn't mere decoration, it was reverence. To the Norse, Sleipnir was a living bridge between the known and the unknowable. Yet beneath Sleipnir's grandeur lies Loki's signature irony. The trickster, often the gods' scourge, gave them their greatest tool. A creature born of chaos became indispensable to order. Even Odin, the All-Father, depended on the offspring of a lie. That's the heart of Sleipnir's legacy. In Norse mythology, even the purest power can spring from the unlikeliest, most tangled roots. The air in Asgard grows thick with the scent of burning runes, the kind of stillness that comes not before a storm, but before the end of all things. This is Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the doom etched into the roots of Yggdrasil long before the first god drew breath. It begins with a howl. Fenrir, the great wolf, finally snaps Gleipnir's cursed fetters, his jaws stretching wide enough to scrape the sky. His roar shakes the 9 realms, a signal to the other bound monsters. Jormungandr thrashes free from the sea, its coils whipping tsunamis inland, while Hel's silent army marches from the underworld, their footsteps like crumbling stone. From the south comes Surtur, the fire giant, his sword brighter than 1,000 suns, flames licking at his heels as he strides across Bifrost. The Rainbow Bridge shatters under his weight, its fragments falling like shattered glass. Behind him, the legions of Muspelheim turn the sky to embers, their approach turning rivers to steam and mountains to slag. The gods don't stand idle. Odin, in his gold-rimmed helm, rallies the Einherjar, the slain warriors of Valhalla, their ranks stretching as far as the eye can see. Thor grips Mjolnir, his gaze locked on Jormungandr, the serpent he's battled since time began. Even Freyja and the Valkyries take to the field, their armor reflecting the hellish glow as they charge toward the inevitable. The battles are as brutal as they are poetic. Odin and Fenrir meet first the All-Father, who sought to outwit fate, and the beast whose rage was forged by chains. The wolf's jaws close around him, and Asgard's king falls silent. Thor, ever the protector, slays Jormungandr with a thunderous blow, but the serpent's dying breath floods the god with venom. He staggers 9 steps, then collapses beside his foe. Tyr and Garmr, Heimdall and Loki, these sworn enemies cut each other down in mutual ruin, their blood mingling in the dirt. And through it all, Surtur's fire spreads, consuming Yggdrasil's branches until the world tree itself is reduced to a skeletal husk. But here's the twist. Ragnarok isn't the end, it's a reset. The seas swallow the scorched earth, and in the silence that follows, a new world emerges from the waves, lush, green, untouched. 2 humans, Lif and Lifthrasir, crawl from Yggdrasil's last surviving hollow, their bodies shielding the ember of humanity. The sun, now birthed anew from the jaws of its devourer, casts light on fields where crops grow untended. And somewhere in the ashes, vague shapes stir gods reborn, their past selves mere legends. This is the paradox of Norse apocalypse: destruction as renewal, annihilation as opportunity. The old order burns away, but the cycle refuses to break. And though the sagas sing of these battles in vivid detail, the clashing swords, the crumbling realms, they're just the prologue to a story too vast for a single telling. So consider this a glimpse, a shadow of the doom to come, because when we return, we'll unravel Ragnarok thread by thread, from the first omens to the last desperate stands. For now, remember this: even in the ashes, there's always another dawn. From the thunderous halls of Asgard to the shadowed roots of Yggdrasil, Norse mythology teems with beings as diverse as the cosmos itself, gods who bleed like mortals, monsters forged from chaos, and creatures that blur the line between beast and divine. Think of Odin, the one-eyed wanderer whispering secrets to ravens, and Loki, the trickster whose mischief births both salvation and doom. Picture Thor's hammer shaking the heavens, while Jormungandr's coils tighten around the world like a living noose. Remember the Valkyries, whose wings carry the slain to glory, and the dwarves, whose anvils ring with artifacts that shape fate. And let's not forget the giants, Skadi's icy grace, Surtur's apocalyptic flame, each a force of nature draped in myth. These stories haven't faded into history, they've exploded into modern veins. Marvel's Thor swings Mjolnir on-screen, his charisma a far cry from the saga's stormy zealot, yet the roots remain. Video games like God of War reinvent the Nine Realms, letting players walk through Midgard's ruins and face Valkyries in battle. Even the word berserk traces back to Odin's frenzied warriors, a linguistic heirloom from Viking longships to football stadiums. These myths aren't relics, they're alive, adapting, whispering anew in every retelling. Now it's your turn. Which creature haunts your imagination? Is it Fenrir, the wolf who devours the sun, or Freyja, riding her chariot of cats? Maybe the eerie Huldra, luring wanderers into the forest with her hollow back. Drop your favorite in the comments, we'd love to hear which legend grips you. And if you're hungry for more deep dives into mythology's richest tales, hit subscribe. The halls of Valhalla might be sealed, but the stories, they're just getting started.